Wah.
Hey. We'd like to start with a little musical selection.
I heard. Well, can I just before we do that? I have a poem I would like to read.
Wonderful.
This
You'd like to read?
No, I would like to recite it.
Okay.
And maybe this is not true for your life now. Maybe in latter years of your life. But how does it go? I know there was a lot of crooks trying to steal your heart, and you never really had love, and you could never figure out how to love. How to love. How to love. You always thought this moment would never last forever. Now you in the corner trying to put it together. How to love. How to love.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Did you write that one? Original?
No, it's not original. It's not an original. It's by
Ghostwriter?
No, it's by a guy named Weezy F Baby.
Please say the baby.
Yes. A New Orleans native, if you will.
Yeah.
Some might call him a prophet, but
okay,
I
that's
wouldn't.
too far.
I wouldn't. That's what some people would say. Anyway.
Wonderful. The reason we're starting out with that musical selection,
Mm-hmm.
Poetry, creativity selection, because we're talking about how to love people that are hard to love.
Yeah, and that's difficult.
Very much so.
Every day, well, not every day, but like also every day, especially on Wednesdays, usually around 3 or 4:30, depending on what time we hit record. And we talk for 45 minutes.
Didn't you say you were going to be nice to me?
I say a lot of things. Let's be honest.
Oh, so don't take you for your word. Because you're not a man of integrity is what I'm hearing.
Dang. You got that one. You got
all
that
right,
one. You got that one.
Reel it
you
in,
got that
Pastor.
one.
Reel it
you
in.
got that one. So what's up?
Not much.
How's life?
Just
How's
loving
loving people?
Hard.
Yeah.
What I'm realizing is the more I lead, the more people are different from me. And it challenges me as a leader to love people better.
Somebody asked me often, what's the hardest thing about ministry?
People.
And then what's the best? I was like, well, the hardest thing about ministry is people, for sure. But also the best thing about ministry is people. For sure. So, because people are people,
Right.
Like, I'm hard to love sometimes. It's one of the questions that we asked in life groups the other day. Why you smiling?
I'm just listening, active listening.
Well, anyway, we're talking about in life group how, like, there's been moments, we could all look back on moments of our own life where we recognize that, dang, I was hard to love.
Oh, 100%.
And it's usually those moments that we can look back on and say, you know what, if I was hard to love in that moment, yet the Lord still loved me, then maybe I can muster up the strength by His Spirit to love others as well. So sometimes a daunting task it is, but very necessary and eternally rewarding. I think that's the main thing, that we just need to recognize that when it comes to loving people, it's the heavenly rewards that we're looking forward to, not any earthly satisfaction.
Yeah.
So anyway, is there anything else that stood out to you from the message on Sunday?
I don't have the verse. You said it, but I didn't write it down. And we read it in life group, and I still forgot to write it down on here.
Can you paraphrase it?
Look, it's right here. Luke 6:32.
Ooh.
The one that talks about basically like it's easy, like everybody loves people.
Yes.
That love them.
Yes.
Let me find
This
it.
is Jesus' words.
Yep.
In Luke 6:32, right?
Yep.
32 or 23?
32. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love him. Love them.
Yep.
So
what?
The reason that stood out to me is because it's no shock that the people that are most unlike you, God still calls us to love them. Sure. Because even sinners love people that love them. Like, that's very normal, very natural.
Sure.
But what sets us apart as believers is loving everybody,
right,
regardless if we agree with them and their thoughts and their feelings and their beliefs and personalities. Like, we love everyone.
So you're saying that it's our love for our enemies that distinguishes us from the world.
Sure. Or not just enemies, Because there are people that are different from you that may not be your enemy.
Sure.
But enemies included for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's important.
Like they'll know us by our love. I think that's somewhere.
Exactly. Right. Like we don't know you by the fruit that you bear and things like that. But that's the one that really stood out to me as well as I was preparing, because it was like, oh, Jesus makes it clear that like what makes you different than the world is that you can love people who are difficult to love. Because he did the same thing and he lives inside of you. And so, you know, you're capable of doing so because because it is a non-human response to love people who are difficult to love or who are just outright your enemies. Yeah. Right. But what allows you to do so is the fact that you've been filled with the Spirit. And that's one of the things we talked about in Life Group, that in our difficulty to love people who are hard to love, this is not something you have to muster up strength for in your own will. Like you don't have it within you unless the Spirit of God lives within you. Right? This is what John meant in 1 John, where he was like God is love. And if God is love and he lives inside of you, then like there should be an overwhelming compulsion for you to love other people. And it's not that we always succeed in loving those who are hard to love, but the compulsion to love them despite you not wanting to is a driving force from the Spirit that all of us should experience if we're being sensitive and being led by the Spirit of God that lives inside of us. Oh, you look like he's gonna say something.
I was, and then you stopped talking earlier than I thought, and I'm like, oh, that's when I talk. Also in 1 John, because I'm reading 1 John in my quiet time right now, and I read today, everyone who loves the Father loves his child as well. And so what we talked about in Life Group was this perspective of just thinking about people differently, like not thinking about people as their differences, but thinking of them as this is the son or daughter of the King. Like this is a child of God, and I'm a child of God. And so if we are both children of God, I need to love God's children, you know? And so sometimes just having that perspective shift when you're dealing with someone that is challenging, and also recognizing that someone that is challenging, like it's someone that's hard for me to love may not be someone that the same person may not be hard for you to love. Sure. So like each person has their own, you know, little things that are challenging. But if I love the Lord and as a father, then I also need to love his children, or else it's disrespectful to him. Sure. You know, like I think about my friends that have kids. Like if I hated Steven's kids, but claimed I love Steven and Laura, it's like,
that don't add up.
That's not how that works, you know? And so just thinking about them in that perspective can sometimes help to have a more loving nature towards them.
What would you say to the person who is concerned about loving people who are hard to love because they feel like they'll be taken advantage of? Because I had somebody come ask me that after service. He was like, hey, let me talk to you real quick. Like, I really want to do this, and I understand what you're saying, and I recognize that it's biblical because, you know, you just gave us a bunch of scripture for it. Right. However, my concern is something that has transpired in my life, that like I love to love people, but I've also been hurt for loving people. So how would you encourage said person?
We had a similar conversation at my life group. Not to copy you.
No, but it's a real thing. It's a great question.
One of my girls was like, hey, I have this coworker who is new, and every time she needs help, she stops me from doing my work and asks me to help her. And like, I want to love her well, but I also have a job to do, and I get aggravated when I get interrupted because, you know, and like kind of how do I navigate that? And so I shared with her that having boundaries is also loving, because the Lord doesn't let us just go crazy and free. Like he has boundaries set in place so that we can experience the best version of the love, like the safest version. And so I was explaining to her that in your love for her, letting her know, hey, here are the boundaries that I have. Like, I want to help you, and I want you to be successful here as well. But like, here's when I can help you. So I think sometimes you have, like, being loving is being direct and saying, hey, this is like not working for me. Sure. If some, you know, in your interactions with people, and like putting up boundaries so that you can love them better and that they can love you better, I think is also healthy. So it's not just like a free for all, you know, you talk and act however you want towards me, but hey, because I love you, I'm putting these boundaries in place to protect both of our hearts. Yeah,
and I think that people should understand that love takes many forms. You know, like obviously the Lord loved us enough to die on the cross for our sins. Yeah. Yet at the same time, like he disciplines those whom he loves. Right. And so like we still get a whipping. And just because it hurts doesn't mean it's not love. It just means that love has taken a new and necessary form for this particular season or juncture of your life, you know? And so I think that's important for us to keep in mind when we interact with other people. Like you should love them, but love from them doesn't always look the same. It don't always look like, let me get this for you. No, it's like, hey, let me help you get stronger so that you can learn to do it for yourself, so that when the next person comes along, you can love them by helping them, but also helping them grow as well.
And I also was talking to her about how love is sacrificial.
Yes.
And so never being interrupted again from doing your work may not be the best way to be loving. Like there is like a balance between you might have to sacrifice a little bit of your time and energy to help her, and also communicating your boundaries is a way to be direct and loving.
Well, let me ask you this, because this was another question that was asked to me. What do you do, or how would you encourage the person who feels like they're being taken advantage of from loving other people, but they're not good with boundaries?
You gotta do it.
Yeah, there it is. That's it.
Also, this is like, it's something that can be developed, which I think you talked about too. Like this is something that develops. So you learn how to love people better as you learn to love people better, right? And so, and a lot of times, sometimes we don't realize that a boundary is necessary until it's crossed and you're like, oh, wait.
That's not
like
good.
You're taking advantage of me. I need to put this in place. You know, so like sometimes you kind of have to
feel it out.
Yeah, feel it out. And depending on each person, right? Like each friendship. And so if you are in a place where you're like, hey, I'm not good with boundaries, but I feel taken advantage of, then that's the exact reason why you need to figure out what boundaries work for you and that person in that friendship. And obviously it depends on what it is, like the situation specifically. Like if they, you know, like I've had to set a lot of boundaries as a leader that I'm like, hey, I love you. And because I love you, I'm not doing X, Y, Z. Or like when you need me and I'm like this, you know, like just letting them know what the expectations are. Because sometimes in ministry, people just think anytime they're free, I'm free.
Yeah.
And so, you know, out of love, like, hey, here's my boundaries.
And even outside of ministry, I think we have to remember that the goal is not to enable people. You know what I'm saying? The goal is to help them, to love them enough to help them grow, to push them into growth, to push them to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. Because that's actually what it looks like to love them properly, you know, that you would help them be able to stand on their own and, you know, not baby them, you know, to where like when you're no longer in their life, they don't know what to do because, you know, you pretty much have done everything for them, you know?
I think a good way to have a boundary setting conversation, if you're not comfortable with that or haven't yet done that, is make it more about you than about them. So like when this happens, I feel like this, and because of that, this is going to be helpful for me. Insert whatever boundary. Because I feel like sometimes when you're trying to set a boundary, it can feel like you don't want to make that person feel like they did something wrong, but you also want that person to know that that's not okay anymore. And so making it about how you feel and what you need in the friendship or in the relationship, I think is a good little framework if people don't know where to start.
Yeah, I think that's important because I think even if you're concerned that the conversation might not go well, it's still necessary. You know, like even if it's a hard conversation to have, it's still loving for you to initiate it, you know, and do the best you can to do so.
And then the next time you have it, it's not as hard.
Right.
Usually.
Now, I want to read this passage of scripture that we read on Sunday night because I think that it just highlights how God feels about how we love. This is 1 Corinthians 13. It says, if I speak human or angelic tongues but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and knowledge, and if I have all faith so that I can move mountains, but I do not have love, I am nothing. And if I give away all my possessions, and if I give over my body in order to boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. And I was like, whoa.
Intense.
Yeah. Like I am nothing.
That's crazy.
I wasn't ready for that one. I ain't gonna lie.
And also you have nothing.
Yeah. Like you doing a lot, but
for no reason.
No, there's no value in what you're doing because, you know, like you don't have love. And so I don't know. I just thought that was like powerful, you know, like you can be doing a whole bunch of nothing if, you know, you're not committed to love. Again, like we're talking about, this goes beyond the feeling. This is like a decision, a commitment that you made to love in the same way Jesus made a commitment to die for us because he loved us, right? He just made a decision to love us through the cross. And so we have to do the same thing in our life as well. And so if you're listening to this and you're kind of, I don't know if I want to go that deep into it, like, maybe you should. Because
going that deep.
I think the scripture indicates to us in several passages that I've referenced only a few on Sunday, how important it is for us to love one another, how important it is to God that we love our neighbor, you know, and also one another, obviously, as well. So that's important. All right. That's it. That's all I got.
Well, you said something before we started recording that I feel like is worth bringing up, because you mentioned just now, like, you know, loving our neighbor as ourselves. And sometimes, and this is something we talked about in Life Group 2 last night, some people don't love themselves. And so loving others as they love themselves it's hard because they don't love themselves at all. And so what would you say to the person? This question was supposed to be for me, but
okay.
What are your thoughts about that? And then I'll share mine as well. Like if someone is having a hard time loving themselves, how can they love other people?
Have you heard I'm sure, I mean, obviously you've heard the saying, hurt people hurt people. I also believe that loved people love people. So I think I said it to say that it starts with you sitting in the presence of God and going into his word and reminding yourself that, like, no matter what anybody says or has said, or even what I have to say about myself, like, if I understand who God is and I understand his act of love in Jesus, then there's no way I can conclude that I am not loved. You know what I'm saying? Now, you can reject his love, his expression of love, and you can decide it doesn't mean nothing to you, but still that doesn't allow you to say that you are not loved, because you are, right? And it's praying for the heart posture that says, you know what, I am loved, and because I'm loved, I can learn to love myself, right? I can learn to love me, because like we talked about earlier, love can be developed. I can learn to love myself, right? I can learn to see my inadequacies and see my frailties and my faults and all the things that I don't like about myself, or rather that I don't love about myself, and say, you know what, in light of all those things, there's something that to be loved about me, because somebody was willing to die for me, right? And that's Jesus, right? And so I think that causes for a lot of reflection. I think that causes for sometimes counseling, you know, but I think that it's a journey worth pursuing. And for some people, it's a journey to learn to love yourself, to be willing to love yourself. But if somebody was willing to die for you for reasons that you don't yet see, then I think it's a journey worth pursuing. So that, because at the end of it, you're going to be saying, man, I now recognize all the many reasons why I'm worth dying for, you know? And I stand, and let me just say this, like, I stand here and I do love myself, but like, I don't have all the reasons why I should love myself that the Lord has, you know, to die for me. But like, those things are being revealed to me as I am walking with him and talking with him. And it's a lifelong process, right? So it's not like do it for 6 months and you're going to be good, you know, like, but no, just pursue the Lord, put your head down, focus on him, and get around people who uplift you and encourage you and can call those things out of you. Like, it will remind you, like, hey, like, you dress well, or like, hey, that like you have pretty hair, or like you have pretty face, or whatever, you know, whatever the case may be. Like the point is that, like, if you surround yourself with people who are uplift you and encourage you, then you start to see the things in yourself that you begin to value, right? Because some people see them, they just don't think they're valuable enough to make mention of, or like to hold on to. There's too much bad to hold on to the good. Right. But it's like, you know,
someone
while we were
call out the good.
Right, exactly. And then while we were yet sinners, he came to die for us. And so and I think this is my last thing, I'll say this. I think we have to start with the faithful love of the Lord, because he's the only person who can love us the way he loves us. And that is unconditionally. Right? And he's so faithful and good and God, really, that he can love us and not be deterred by our inadequacies, by our wandering, by our ugliness, if you will, because he's already foresaw those things and he died anyway. And so he's just a sure place to be. Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay. Hopefully
hopefully I left you with
something. Yeah. Also, what I found in this journey of following the Lord is that the more I understand about him and his grace for me, the more grace I can pour out. So it makes it easier to love people when I realized how much it took for him to love, like how much I know about myself and how much he loves me anyway. And so I'm able to like show that to other people because if he did it for me, he can do it for, through me too. Also in Judges, not my favorite verse in Judges, but one that's sticking out to me right now is when the Lord tells Gideon, go in the strength that you have. And so whatever ways of loving that you have now, just use it. And as you practice it, the way that you love people better will grow. The more you practice loving people better. So like just go in whatever love you have, do the best you can with what you've got. And then the Lord, as you grow in him, he'll show you how to do more of that.
I left my life group with a challenge this week, and that was to commit to loving one person in your life that has just been hard to love in this season, you know? And don't do like this baby act of love. Like, no, do something that makes them think, man, I wonder why I did that, in light of the tension that's been in our relationship of late, you know, whether it be a dating relationship or a friendship or, a relationship that you have with a family member or just like somebody at your job, coworker, boss, like whatever. Just like commit to it the same way the Lord committed to loving us in our weakest moments. A powerful moment that we had in our small group, life group, was when we started to reflect on Jesus on the cross, and he mustered up the strength to yell out, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do." Like, can you just imagine? Like, my eyes was getting watery, and everybody was like locked in because it's just like an incredible act of love to love somebody so much that even while you're dying for them and they're beating you ruthlessly, you still muster up the little strength you have to advocate for them to the Father and say like, no, like forgive them. They don't know the way they think they know, you know? And I just think that that's a beautiful illustration of how much the Lord loves us and how much he cares for us. And prayerfully, it intrigues you to go on the journey discovering what is it about you that the Lord loves, you know? And so that's my encouragement to you. You're loved. And because you're loved, you're called to go share that love with the world, especially those who are not like you.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy challenge, but it's certainly one worth doing. So start somewhere. Start by picking one person and do it.
Yelling at me.
Not you, but
yeah,
you too. You too, Kirk. He said, yes, sir.
See, the thing too, whenever we focus on something as a ministry, I feel like, and I don't know, this is just a silly opinion, but I'm like, whatever we're doing as a ministry or whatever we're challenging our people to do, I feel like the Lord always challenges me first. It's like, you lead the way. You lead by example. So I've been working very hard to love people well.
It's not.
And it's hard.
I mean, even the cross itself is a reminder that like, hey, this is not going to be easy. But also he never promised that it would, you know? But it is what we're called to. And I think that, what did he say in life group? It was so good. I think I asked them like, what is the most challenging thing about loving people? And they said like, it's my reaction to things. Like I can love a person, but if they don't respond to me the right way, if they on 10, then I'm ready to go on 12. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that we have to learn to love people and how we respond, which this is when James enters the conversation and he raised his hand. He's like, yeah, but remember, be slow to speak and quick to listen. You know, be slow to wrath. Do not sin in your anger. You know what I'm saying? And so again, love is more than a feeling here. So like, that's not to say that you're not gonna be angry, that you're not gonna want to like lash out on somebody or like match their energy. No, but it is to say that you're gonna take a deep breath. You're gonna walk away for a moment. And you're gonna come back because you remember who you are and what you represent and how you are supposed to respond in situations that try to provoke you to less than.
Something that's been very helpful for me when I'm interacting with people that are hard for me to love is to just be curious, because I found that the more I understand about someone and why they are the way that they are, the more likely I am to have more grace and more empathy, because I'm like, oh, this makes a lot of sense because of you know, how you were raised
Sure.
or, you know, what you're working on. Like
Right.
that makes so much sense. And because I have a deeper understanding of them, because I love them enough to be curious about them.
Yeah.
Now it's easier for me to love them. May not be easy, but
Right.
easier
Because
I
understand.
understand them a little bit better. And so that can be something that's helpful when we're, you know, interacting with people.
Sure.
Take a second, take a deep breath, and just get curious. Like, I wonder why they would react that way, or I wonder why they're thinking that. And usually there's a reason, and it's
I think that would save us a lot of tension with people, a lot of heartache and pain, and just unnecessary
like just assuming
tension.
stuff because they're not like you. It's like,
Right.
oh, if that was me, I would not do that. Well, that's the point, because they're not you.
And even just like, even I guess alongside of like getting to know a person, it's just like if you feel like there's tension and beef, like part of growing up to be an adult is learning how to have hard conversations, you know? And so like you'll never know how to have hard conversations in a loving way until you start having hard conversations, you know? And so like it's definitely hard to have hard conversations, obviously. Nevertheless, understand that you're called to those. You know, like Jesus had to have a hard conversation with Peter after Jesus denied him. And it was even hard for Peter to have that conversation, right? But it was a conversation worth having.
Yeah.
And it was a sense of redemption for Peter. And so, you know, and we know what Peter goes on to do for the kingdom and for the Lord. And so, you know, you don't know the bliss that it could lead to. So anyway, let's love. It's a big deal.
That's love.
Election season around the corner. And that's where the rubber gonna meet the road. And but I'm confident
We'll be equipped.
Yes, I'm confident our people will respond well. And the reason why I want to do this series now is that I want to recall it later when it's like really in our face, and so that we can remember to do so, and even appreciate like the diversity. I think this Sunday is really gonna be about a little bit about learning to love ourselves, because like you are in the image of God, but like if you're if you've been made into the image of God, so is your neighbor,
right?
And like if you can understand that and learn to appreciate it, then what it unlocks for you is another side of God that you just that maybe you haven't grown up around, maybe you aren't as familiar with, but like you get a different glimpse of who God is because He's revealed in a different way through your neighbor.
Right.
And then you get a better sense of heaven because, you know, there's so many people from different ethnic groups in heaven and so many different viewpoints of life and this, that, and a third. But, you know, it takes a lot of work to maintain a glimpse of heaven on earth because, you know, well, we're still on earth and
right.
it's easy to lose sight. But with the faithfulness of the Lord and His grace and mercy on us, I think we'll be able to do it. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
amen.
Love y'all so much.
See y'all Sunday.
Even though y'all hard to love sometimes. Wait, cut that out.
Definitely not cutting that out. Think you funny?
Yep.
Funny guy.
Thanks, Kurt.